3 long hours every night. So mentally I am fully occupied with that. But then, an idea crossed my mind, because last night I referred briefly to the structure of Islamic State while I was explaining ayat number 58 and 59 of Surah An-Nisa. So then I decided that I should go into some detail about the structure of Islamic State. But before I start, let me explain briefly the 3 ayat which I have recited in the beginning. Firstly, the ayah number 55 of Surah An-Nur. In this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made 3 very firm and solemn promises with the Muslims, although those promises are conditional. وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises to you, O Muslims, but to those of you who have real faith and who do really good deeds, not Muslims by name, not Muslims by birth only, real Muslims, practical Muslims, having real faith and real good deeds of Muslims. If these 2 conditions are fulfilled, then there are 3 promises, and they are 1 in 3 or 3 in 1. The same thing is repeated. لَيَسْتَخْلِفَنَّهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ كَمَا اسْتَخْلَفَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. First promise to these Muslims is that Allah will give them the caliphate, the khilafah, the rule on earth, just as He gave to those who were before them. One must recall Dawood and Sulaiman alayhim as-salatu was-salam. Ya Dawood, inna ja'alnaka khalifatan fil ard. You will also be given the caliphate and the rule over earth. Number 2, وَلَا يُمَكِّنَنَّ لَهُمْ دِينَهُمُ الَّذِي ارْتَضَىٰ لَهُمْ. And He will establish in the earth the deen which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been very much pleased to recognize for them. And that is Islam. So the same thing. Khilafah for the Muslims or tamakkunul deen, the establishment of deen. The same thing. Then the third, وَلَا يُبَدِّلَنَّهُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ خَوْفِهِمْ أَمْنًا. The conditions of fear will be changed to that of peace and tranquility. The same thing. When Muslims will be the rulers, they will have the caliphate on the earth, well, they will have none to fear then. The conditions of fear will be changed to those of security and peace and tranquility. These were the 3 promises made in Surah An-Nur. And the time of the revelation of Surah An-Nur is either the later half of the 5th year after Hijrah or the beginning of the 6th year after Hijrah. Now these promises came true practically very soon after the revelation of this ayah. In the 6th year we find the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Inna fatahna laka fatham mubina. The course of the events totally changed. In the 7th year there was the conquest of Khaybar. A lot of wealth came to the Muslims. Their poverty gone away. The very next year, 8th year, victory of Makkah. The apostle, the messenger of Allah, marching with 10,000 mu'mins victoriously into Makkah. And within 1 year more, the whole of the Arabian Peninsula came under the rule of the Prophet or the Muslims, or you may call the kingdom of heaven on earth, was established over the whole of the Arabian Peninsula. And within 24 years after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, this extended to the east and to the north and to the west. From the western coast of Africa to the Oxus River in the east and the Caucasian mountains in the north. All this region came under the caliphate. So this promise came to be true. Each letter of it was accomplished. But then there was a period of downfall. Although the Muslims remained the rulers of the world, But this was not the system of caliphate. Let me here quote a hadith from Israr Ahmed ibn Hanbal rahimahullah, and it is from the companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam radiyallahu anhu, Nu'man ibn Bashir. He is the narrator. He says that the Prophet said, تكون النبوة فيكم ما شاء الله أن تكون ثم يرفعه الله إذا شاء يرفعها. Nabuwah, prophethood, will remain amongst you so long as Allah wants it to remain. That is, I will remain with you as long as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants me to remain with you. Then I'll have to go. إِنَّكَ مَيَّتٌ وَإِنَّهُمْ لَمَيَّتُونَ. And then this era of prophethood will come to an end. But then there will be ثُمَّ تَكُونُ خِلَافَةً عَلَى مِنْهَاجِ النَّبُوَّةِ. Then there will be a period of caliphate, of the pattern in the footsteps of Nabuwah, what we call Khilafatul Rashida. ثُمَّ يَرْفَعُ اللَّهُ إِذَا شَاءَ يَرْفَعُهَا. It will also be finished. A time will come, there will be an end to that period also. Then the third period will come. ثُمَّ تَكُونُ مُلْكًا عَاضًا. Kingship, and a biting kingship, cruel kingship. But the kingship of the Muslims. The Umayyads and the Abbasids and the Ottomans, they were Muslims at least. This was, but some of the rulers were very good also, very pious also, but most of them were like the kings of other nations, amassing wealth, building palaces, enjoying the life. Then the fourth period, ثُمَّ تَكُونُ مُلْكًا جَبْرِيًّا. Then there will be a period of slavery. Now, before at least, the kings were Muslims, maybe nominal Muslims only, but they were Muslims. But then we became subject to the throne of England, or we were being ruled by the Italians, or by the French, or by the Dutch. So that was the fourth period of European colonialism. But then says the Prophet ﷺ, this period will also come to an end. ثُمَّ تَكُونُ خِلَافَةً عَلَى مِنْهَاجِ النَّبُوَّةِ. Then again that caliphate on the pattern of, or in the footsteps of Nabuwah will again be established. So actually humanity is at the threshold. At this time we are in the middle, maybe more than middle of the fourth period. Because the period of slavery has not yet come to an end. As I was saying before, this Western European colonialism, apparently it came to an end in the middle of this century when all the Muslim countries, one by one, they got independence. But this is only apparent freedom. The control remains in the hands of the West. Only they are not ruling directly or militarily. They are controlling by remote control. And now another, wave or flood of this new colonialism is coming, and that is economic control of the whole of the globe. That is the Jewish plan. So actually this fourth period is still continuing, but as the Prophet has said, it has to come to an end. It will come to an end. Huwa Sadiqul Masduq, he is the true one. And even Allah has testified to his truthfulness. So the fifth period would be again Khilafah, in the pattern of and in the footsteps of the Nabuwah. Now that period is sure to come. And the second thing, I can't, because the time is limited, I can't give you the text of the ahadith. There are several ahadith. One in the Sahih of Imam Muslim rahimahullah, another one in the Musnad of Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal rahimahullah, and so on, which tell us that now when for the second time this system of caliphate will be established, it will be global, not limited to any part of the world. Deen of Allah will be supreme. Whole of the earth will come under the system of caliphate. Now this is something, now it is of practical importance for us. Because now we can cling to this hope, to this ray of hope, which has come to us from the sayings of the Prophet ﷺ. We have to gird up our loins. We have to make a firm resolve to work for that. And now practically there are two questions which must be dealt with intellectually first, so that we can make a move in the right direction. What are those two questions? Number one, how can this system be established? What is the methodology? That is the most practical question. Can it be established by the means which are prevalent, which are in common use today? By ballot, or by bullet, or through any mass movement? Regarding this question, I will say only one thing. There is a saying of Imam Malik rahimahullah, لَن يَصْلُحَ آخِرُ هَذِهِ الْأُمَّةِ إِلَّا بِمَا صَلُحَ بِهِ أَوَّلُهَا. The last part of this ummah will not be reformed except on the pattern on which and through the methodology by which the first part of the ummah was reformed. What was the first part of the ummah after the period of Nabuwah? Khilafah ala minhaj al-Nabuwah. What's going to be the last part? Again, Khilafah ala minhaj al-Nabuwah. This Khilafah ala minhaj al-Nabuwah can be established only by adopting the methodology of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam and his companions, radiyallahu anhum ajma'in. And we have to focus, our lenses. And we have to read between the lines of the seerah. And we have to infer and deduce from the seerah of the Prophet. And we have to understand the philosophy of the seerah of the Prophet. But I will not go into detail. Maybe if I find another chance, I will discuss this question in detail. What is the methodology? Where we are erring. There are movements, very sincere people throughout the Muslim world. I was very much pleased to read in a newspaper that the Masjumi party of Indonesia is also coming up again. It had vanished. But this is actually a global phenomenon, starting from Indonesia, then Indo-Pakistan subcontinent, then we have in Afghanistan, then the revolution in Iran, then the Brotherhood, then now, the Refah party in Turkey, and so on and so forth. What was going to happen in Algiers? It's a worldwide phenomenon. But, alas, we have not been able to achieve anything anywhere up till now, except they may say Iran. At least they have been able to establish a government which is run by their ulama, according to their own school of fiqh. But the only success, this is the only example, solitary example. We are not succeeding anywhere. Why? Allah is not cruel. Allah is not unjust. And these movements are not insincere. People of, Jama'ah Islamiyah in Egypt, they are giving their lives. So many hanged, so many shot, so many killed. They are laying down their lives. Can I doubt their sincerity and integrity? How many people in Algiers thrown in the concentration camps in the deserts? Living bodies decaying in the sun. Living bodies decaying. What is happening? They are very sincere. But the only thing is, the methodology is not correct. They will get the reward in the hereafter, based on their sincerity and intentions. But they cannot get the success in this world unless they adopt the methodology of the Prophet ﷺ. So that is one question, very big question. But the second question is, what shape this Khilafah will take today? Will it be exactly the same as the Khilafatul Rashida of 1300 or 1400 years ago? Or will there be any difference? What will be the legal and constitutional structure of Islamic State, of Caliphate? This is also an academic question. But it is not a theoretical question only, it is a practical question. You have to convince people. You have to tell them how you will run the affairs of the state. What will be the process of legislation? Will it be exactly the same as Khilafat-e-Rashida? Pardon me if I offend your feelings. It will not be exact replica of Khilafat-e-Rashida. It cannot be. Why? Note 3 points. Khilafat-e-Rashida was the appendix of Nabuwah. This society was reformed by Muhammad himself, sallallahu alayhi. And number 2, there was a group of people whose souls had been purified by Muhammad sallallahu alayhi. All selfishness taken away, all lusts, greeds, lust for power, lust for money, all souls of the companions, they were just purified from all these things. Can we have and hope to have people of such character today? Number 3, it was basically a tribal society. And in a tribal society, the mutual consultation only of the chiefs of the tribe, the heads of the clans, that is sufficient. No use of adult suffrage and no ballot box, no elections. Did we see any elections? Any voting? No. So actually, these are the points which must be kept in mind. What is the result? We have to derive and deduce and infer the principles of Islamic State, the principles of Caliphate from the Quran and the Sunnah, and keeping the ideal model before us of Khilafat-e-Rashida. But we have to translate those principles into the realities of today. You can't ignore. If this is agreed upon, now let me give you 3 fundamentals of Caliphate. And I'm venturing a statement. These 3 points, these 3 things added to any democratic structure will turn it into Khilafah. Take any most advanced form of democracy, add to it 3 points, and it will become Khilafah. What are those 3 points? Number 1, it has to be declared that sovereignty belongs to Allah and Allah alone, to none else. Inul hukmu illa lillah, hamara la ta'budu illa iyyah, zalika ad-dinul qayyim. Lahul mulk, la yushriku fi hukmihi ahada, wa lam yakun lahu sharikun fil mulk, lahu mulku as-samawati wal ard. No form of human sovereignty, any form of human sovereignty, whether individual, aristocratic, or democratic, popular sovereignty, they are all kufr, they are all shirk. Sarvari zeba faqat us zaat be hamta ko hai, hukmara hai ik wahi baqi butane azri. Add this to the American Constitution if you can. We are very fortunate, we who belong to Pakistan. By the grace of Allah, Pakistan was established in 1947. And not later than 1949, the objectives resolution was passed by the Constituent Assembly of Pakistan. An assembly representing 10 crores, 100 million people declared sovereignty belongs to Allah. All the authority that we have in our hands is a sacred trust with us. And it can be exercised only within the limits prescribed by the real sovereign. This is objective resolution. So this first step was taken in Pakistan. We were going in the right direction. Establishment of Pakistan was in the right step, in the right direction. Then passing of this objective resolution was surely a step forward, very decisive. At least I don't know any other country in the world, including Saudi Arabia or, for that matter, any other country, which might have this thing in black and white in the constitution. We wash our hands off sovereignty. We don't claim sovereignty. Sovereignty belongs to Allah and Allah alone. The only constitution in the world is the constitution of Pakistan. Anyhow, this is the first prerequisite. Now the second prerequisite, and that is actually the practical implementation of this sovereignty of Allah. How will it be implemented? Second clause of the constitution should be, no legislation can be done here in this country, in this state, at any level, in any sphere of life, repugnant to the book of Allah and the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Limitations. Sovereignty for Allah and legislative authority for Allah and Rasul. The messenger is not an associate in sovereignty. No, it will become shirk. Sovereignty alone for Allah. But legislative authority, Sharia, alayhi salatu wassalam, even Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is Sharia. Allah is Sharia, Shara'a lakum min ad-deen ma wassa bihi Nuhan. And also Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the legislative authority is limited. Absolute authority is only to Muhammad and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, if this provision is made, no law can be passed, no regulations can be framed, no legislation can be done at any level, central level, provincial level, state level, county level, village level, anywhere, which is repugnant to the Quran and the Sunnah. What does it mean? The legislative authority of the legislative assembly, you may call it shura, you may call it majlis, you may call it something. Call the rose by any name. It will smell as sweet. You must have some legislative authority in the country. If you have to run a state, the affairs of the state, a modern state, there should be somebody, parliament, call it Congress, call it Majlis-e-Milli, call it Majlis-e-Shura, whatever name you give it. But the legislative authority of this will be limited by the injunctions of the book of Allah, that is Quran, and the Sunnah of the Prophet, that is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now let me say a few words more about these two things. The nature of an Islamic state. To define it in the current terminology, in the current idiom, it's very important. To reach the minds of the people, you must use the current idiom, the current terminology. We must think, is Islamic State a democracy? Partly yes, partly no. Why? This Western concept of democracy is based on popular sovereignty, which is kufr. So Islam is not a democracy in that sense. But within the limits of the Sharia, all Muslims are equal. They can give their opinions. They can decide by majority vote. But they can choose between mubah. This is also mubah, this is also mubah. Which one to adopt? Amruhum shura bainahum. Now this is up to them. Within the limits of the Sharia, it is a democracy. You may call it a limited democracy. But the best terminology was coined by Maulana Maududi himself in a small book, a very small book, but very profound. Islam ka nazriya siyasi, the political theory of Islam. Islam is Islamic State is neither democracy nor theocracy. It is theo-democracy. Because in theocracy, a religious group, it has the powers to legislate. Whether they are Brahmins, or they are the ulama, or he is the Pope and his cardinals. No. No religious people, no religious hierarchy in Islam. Neither Brahmanism, nor Papayat, nothing of the sort. Only Quran and Sunnah, that's all. Religion is to be followed, but the authority is not in the hands of the religious people, religious scholars. It is theo, only in the sense that it is limited by the injunctions of the Quran and the Sunnah. But within this circle, it's demo. All Muslims are equal. Al-Muslimu kuffun li kulli muslimin. This is the saying of Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayh. Very profound saying. All Muslims are equal. And let me give you here the ayah. Ayah number 1 of Surah Al-Hujurat. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tuqaddimu bayna yaday Allahi wa rasulih. Oh, you who believe or profess to believe, don't go beyond Allah and His Messenger. Tilka hududullah, fala taqrabuha, fala ta'taduha. Within these limits, you are free. You can't transgress the limit. You can't cross the limit. The limits laid down by the book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tuqaddimu bayna yaday Allahi wa rasulih wattaqullah inna Allaha samiyun alim. And a very beautiful hadith which explains this ayah. The Prophet has been reported to have said, Masalul mu'mini ka masalil farasi fi akhiyatihi. The example or likeliness of a Muslim or a mu'min is to the likeliness of a horse tied to a peg. A Muslim is not free in the common sense of the word to do whatever he likes. Behaya bashu harte khahi kun. A Muslim is bound by the injunctions of the Quran and the Sunnah. He believes in Allah, he has to obey Him. He believes in Muhammad, he has to follow him, sallallahu alayhi. He believes in Quran, he has to accept it as the code and the guide for life. Now you just extend this hadith. Supposing there's a very big open field and you want that the horse should also run and walk. So you take a rope of 100 yards length and tie the horse with a peg with that rope of 100 yards length. What will be the result? A circle of 100 yards radius will come into existence. Within this circle, the horse is free to move to the north, to the south, to the east, to the west. To 10 yards, 12 yards, 50 yards, 60 yards, 70 yards, but not beyond 100 yards, neither in the north nor in the south, nor further better in the west or the east. This is the combination of freedom and limitations. You are free within this circle. And within this circle, it is amrukum. Here you can decide. And you can decide by majority vote. What's the harm? We have to serve some drink in some meeting. But we can choose only the halal drink. This is the limitation. But for example, there can be 4 alternatives. There can be Ruh Afza or Sinkara or something else or something else. Let it be decided by majority vote. No harm. Here you can have the highest values of democracy, but within the limits of the circle, not beyond that. Now this is, the second terminology that Maulana Maududi coined was, instead of popular sovereignty, Islam believes in popular vicegerency. Sovereignty to Allah, vicegerency to man. وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. For man it is vice-gerency.